Fred Simonton was born at Gary, South Dakota. And recently I saw some notes that Fred himself had compiled, and it said that Gary had a population of 521 in 1922, and that it now has a population of 523. After serving in World War II, Fred worked for first the South Dakota Farmers Union, the National Farmers Union, and then the North Dakota Farmers Union. It was when he was working as an organizer for National Farmers Union that he went to St. Mary's, Kansas, doing field work. And there he met the daughter of a very great Farmers Union family, the Paul Lenher family. And he met Regina, and she became Mrs. Fred Simonton. Fred organized in many states in the Farmers Union: Utah, Idaho, Kansas, at least 10 during that time. In 1964, Fred became executive director of the Midwest Electric Consumers Association, headquartered in Denver, and it is in that capacity that he comes to speak to us tonight. We have discussed yesterday and today the many fights that we face as farmers and citizens of rural America. As it happens, the fight is now centering around the issue of 2% money for our electric and telephone cooperatives. That's the fight today in Washington and tomorrow. As a special order of business this morning, Fred, this convention unanimously passed a resolution demanding the immediate passage without compromise of the Denholm bill restoring our REA program. I know you will have much to say about this crucial issue, but I want you to know that this convention is with you, ladies and gentlemen, Fred Simonton, a great hard-hitting fighter.
Thank you, President DeShant, officers and members of the Board of Directors of the National Farmers Union, my Farmers Union friends, and may I say that Gene Porter was once on the board of Midwest Electric Consumers Association. I am pleased to have been invited to participate in this National Farmers Union Convention. I am very pleased, and I would expect nothing less of the Farmers Union than to hear what Tony has just reported to you on the support of the Denholm bill. Now, my first job, as Tony has told you, was with the South Dakota Farmers Union, and I took a job there for 3 months. It was supposed to last 3 months, in 1948. My employment lasted finally 16 years, with more firings of myself and rehirings than any other Farmers Union employee that I know of, Tony. I have known your president, Tony DeShant, and most of your state presidents and other leaders for many years, and prominent in your membership are many farmers with whom I have worked on REA and public power problems over the last 10 years. The National Farmers Union has been and continues to be an island of progress for rural America and for this entire nation. You have been so because you were not always in style. You have been so because you have not always played the shell game with your members or with other organizations of seeking to achieve a consensus by satisfying everybody, which only can mean operating at the lowest common denominator of what is feasible without struggle. You have not taken the paths of least resistance. You have been a leader in America because you know that effort and struggle is the rule of progress in a free society. The Farmers Educational and Cooperative Union of America and the association I represent here, Midwest Electric Consumers, both share not only a common purpose, but both share an incorporated nameplate almost as long as a peal of thunder. Now, there was a small boy who asked his father, "Who invented soap?" And his father said, "I don't know, why don't you ask your mother?" And the boy said, "I would, but I don't want to know that much about it." Well, you may not want to know that much about Midwest Electric Consumers Association either, but I do want to tell you that we are a service organization of rural electric cooperatives, municipal electric systems, and public power districts located in the Missouri River Basin states, in the states of Montana and Wyoming and Colorado, and North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, and Iowa. You will note that our association roughly overlaps the heartland of the Farmers Union organization. Our association was organized in the decade of the 1950s. It was organized because the rural electric cooperatives and municipal utilities in the Missouri River Basin faced a most serious power supply crisis. What brought public power people together was a recognition that a unified action was essential if the small electric utilities were to have increasing supplies of electric power at low cost to meet your growth requirements and keep that energy on your farm. The individuals and organizations responsible for creating Midwest committed the organization to support activities that would keep power costs at reasonable levels for the consumer on the farm and in the small town. And that commitment still continues. The consumer-owned electric utilities affiliated with Midwest support resource development because they know what these splendid programs have accomplished in the past, and because they know what they can mean in the future for the social and the economic well-being of the people who live on the plains states. Now, rural electrification was a latent arrival in the Missouri River Basin states. Because we lived far apart and we still have only 3 consumers per mile of line in our 9-state area, and because wholesale power supplies either were not available or extremely expensive, you had to put together 3 basic ingredients before the job of electrifying your farm could be undertaken in a substantial way. And that first ingredient was put together in our area largely by this organization. It was an educational program on cooperatives, of service to members at cost, the idea of people banding together, organizing, to provide themselves through cooperatives with electric service at cost. The second and third ingredients that brought electricity to your farm required the assistance of an understanding president and a sympathetic Congress. The REA Act provided the needed low-cost capital, the 2% direct loan program. And rural electrification in the plains states was still not feasible until we built the 6 mighty dams on the Missouri River and got the Flood Control Act of 1944, in which this organization played such a great part in getting it through Congress. That decision to build the 6 great dams on the Missouri River, together with the preference clause, assured the Rural Electrification Administration that bulk power would be available at reasonable cost. And with these ingredients put together, the lights came on in the heartland of rural America, and with REA came the principal program that could mean a hope for rural development. One of the reasons that we maintain a keen interest in our organization in water resource development is because the hydroelectric power generated at multipurpose projects is an essential part of our power supply. I have noted our interest and support for water resource development programs, which you also share in the National Farmers Union. The policies projected for water resource development of what is known as the loose National Water Commission review draft will bring economic disaster to the Great Plains states if they are adopted by the Commission, accepted by this administration, and implemented by the Congress. We all know that we are abandoning schools and churches and homes and farmsteads and a wide variety of facilities and services provided at both public and private expense in rural America. And while we build new facilities, again, largely at public expense, in areas of the country that are already overcrowded with people who are being forced to leave the nation's rural areas. We hoped the National Water Commission, with a $5 million appropriated by Congress to spend on the study, would provide us with an analysis of the potential role of water resource development in reversing the outmigration from rural America. Isn't it ridiculous that about 98% of the people live on 2% of the land in this great country? The seaboard states already have more people and higher levels of economic development than their resources can support, and that produces the social problems in the cities and the polluted air and the dirty water and unattractive living conditions too often. Rural America, and particularly the region I represent here, have underutilized resources and a declining economy. The two Dakotas have both lost population during the last decade, as did the entire region Midwest represents, if you do not include 3 or 4 metropolitan areas. There are more people that live in the District of Columbia than live in either Dakota, and twice as many people live in our nation's capital as make their home in Wyoming. Far too few city people realize that the other side of the coin of their congestion and miseries is the loss of people for the land in rural America. And far too few rural people understand that their problems are inseparably linked to those of urban America. Our association still believes that a federally financed, multi-purpose water resource development program is in the interest of rural America and the total national interest. Yet this National Water Commission criticizes federally assisted irrigation programs almost simultaneously with the substantial food sales to Russia and India and China, and criticized family farmers even while there was a worldwide awareness that all-out food production in the United States is necessary to avert world famine. Perhaps the Water Commission just did not consider the possibility that maximum food production may well be the country's best single opportunity to generate the $11 billion worth of foreign exchange required annually to finance our imports of petroleum products and the basic sources of urgently needed energy. Of course, you need a price for that. And you and the National Farmers Union, historic and valiant fighters for the family farm and the 160-acre limitation in reclamation law, need to know that this National Water Commission, headed by Chuck Luce of Consolidated Edison of New York, has recommended that the 160-acre concept be abandoned. I bring this to your attention because while a litany of farm service programs are going down the drain, this little publicized National Water Commission report is making its contribution to the demise of family-type agriculture and is assisting the already ominous growth of corporation-controlled agriculture. The National Water Commission has issued a miserable report for more mergers and more conglomerates and more super corporations at a time when we need a national policy of a distribution of opportunity for people. I know that it does not come as a surprise to most of you that we are together and joined in a fight to save rural America. Since the middle of December, there has been a wholesale gutting of proven farm programs that have paid their way by strengthening the economy and preserving natural resources of the food and fiber you grow on the farm and ranch. The litany is long. The end of disaster relief programs, the termination of REAP, a finale to the water bank program, rural housing programs, OEO, the phasing out of the Farmers Home Administration, the end of rural and water and sewer programs. And incredible as it may seem, with all the formality of due process of law, of a one-page back-to-back double-spaced press release, the Secretary of Agriculture unilaterally terminated the REA program, which has been operating successfully and continuously for 36 years, pursuant to a specific statute enacted by the Congress. That job was accomplished under secrecy on weekends and holidays when offices were closed and when the Congress was out of town. As of last December 29, the question of the future of rural electrification has become a real question mark. We are categorically opposed to these sudden and wholesale hatcheting and crippling of farm programs, including REA. The REA program was approved by Congress. It was funded by Congress and signed into law by the President. The Congress, by enacting the PACE Act in 1944, made REA a permanent agency and a federal law. We consider this program to be duly enacted as a law of the land. Since we believe in government by law, it has come as a considerable shock, like April Fool's Day, it had arrived early, that the executive branch of our government assumes that he received a mandate in November to ignore the law from the electorate. The division of power between the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches of our government is the cornerstone which has supported and made possible the continued existence of our democratic institutions for almost 200 years. The power to declare war, advise and consent in foreign policy, levy and collect taxes, and to make appropriations and direct these expenditures are the fundamental and all-important responsibilities of the representatives we elect to the Congress of the United States. Somehow we've got to get the message to Congress, and that message must be that the control of Congress over the institutions of government is eliminated if the Congress permits its responsibility to levy taxes and make appropriations and direct their expenditures to be abrogated either by congressional action or unconstitutional usurpation of authority by the executive. With the bombing that occurred of rural programs, President Nixon has demonstrated his failure to understand the basic nature of our political institutions and an arrogant contempt for the people that we elect to the Congress of the United States. Now we must understand that there is a difference in cutting back on programs. There's a difference about impounding funds or cutting back. Impoundment is serious enough, but we must understand that when a program like REA is eliminated, wiped from the law books, even after the White House itself had asked the Congress last year to deliberate on the program and supply money for it, then this is an issue that is apart from the whole other question of the impoundment of funds. Constitutional lawyers tell us there's a lot of room for debate on what the Constitution intends on the impoundment of funds. Your friend and mine, Angus MacDonald, the great Scotchman, wrote in our paper that, quote, the fight over who controls the purse strings of government money goes back hundreds of years. I thought the issue was settled in 1644 when Oliver Cromwell chopped off the head of Charles I of England, but the fight still is going on. The REA law, REA, a permanent agency and a federal law, was eliminated by presidential fiat. This is different than the impoundment of funds. That is why Senator Gail McGee from Wyoming says the president has torn the Constitution to shreds. That is why Senator McGee says he will not receive even a new agricultural budget request from the president for the new fiscal year, because he says that he knows after a lot of hard work by himself as chairman and by his fellow members of that committee, he'll read next Christmas in the newspaper that the agricultural appropriations were all just a joke, and so were the hearings. There is more at stake than the dismantling of farm programs in rural America. We are in a constitutional crisis, and worse, our whole trust in government is being destroyed. When the president annihilates the 2% direct loan program without so much as a fare thee well to the Congress, who had worked to carry out the administration's intent, then the time has come to draw the line. Midwest is drawing the line on two fronts, and we're glad to have your support. One in the Congress, and the line has also been drawn in the courts. My friends, the basic issue, it seems to me, is whether the people of this country any longer can rely upon the word of our national government. If the government's word is no good, then organizations like our cooperatives will not know how to work with it. That is why we are drawing the line in the courts. Now, on the congressional front, Midwest and NRECA supported the Humphrey-Aiken bill in the Senate, which simply reiterates and reaffirms the original and continuing intent of Congress that the 2% direct rural electric and rural telephone loan authority vested in the administration by the REA Act of 1936 and 1944 is mandatory in the amount appropriated by the Congress each year. Today and tomorrow, hearings will be on the Denham bill, and I am very pleased that you have communicated your support. And you should wire the President at any one of the White House addresses. I don't care. And also the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, and even the Secretary of Agriculture, pleading for the administration to continue the REA program as directed by Congress. When the President and the Secretary of Agriculture proclaim that REA is no longer a program serving the farmers of America, it's high time the Farmers Educational and Cooperative Union of America got into action, because they need to be educated. Now, we could understand the White House decision to abolish the program if they really believed it was not a program dedicated to the servants of a genuine rural America. We think the slur of the President calling us dilettantes is a gross insult to all genuine farmers and ranchers who have worked so hard for so many years to make those cooperatives successful in serving the areas with such extremely low density. Please help us get that fact to him and to the Office of Management and Budget in order that this program can still be saved. Now, we are also, as I indicated, drawing the line in the courts against this callous action of the administration trying to squeeze all of us into accepting the illegal seizure of the REA program and accepting a much inferior substitute through the Rural Development Act or some kind of compromise and negotiations, which simply means turning your cooperative over to private power companies. And one of our members of Midwest has initiated a suit a week ago today. In the United States District Court at Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the suit charges Secretary of Agriculture Butts and REA Administrator David Hamill with violation of federal laws in failing to administer the loan program under the REA Act. What Sioux Valley Empire Electric Association at Coleman, South Dakota, is challenging for your rural electric associations across this land is the main issue. Can the President legally terminate a program authorized and funded and signed into law? The court action seeks reinstatement of the REA lending program. The complaint charges the termination of the REA lending program and attempts to substitute a financing plan under the 1972 Rural Development Act are without legal justification and in violation of federal law. Further and significantly, the court action also asks that the defendants be enjoined from making loans under a Rural Development Act. Now, the problems that your cooperatives, REA cooperatives, have, I hasten to add, is only a small part of the problems you as farmers and ranchers have generally. I know that federal farm price support and income legislation expires this year, and that you may be without price protection. If you as farm operators are going to be forced to a free market, I hope that other segments of business that are protected from the rigors of a free market economy, which we've never had anyway, by direct or indirect government subsidies, it's not subsidies, for oil companies and barges and ship operators and exporters and defense contractors, or private power companies. The word for them is incentives. Well, you better fight to wean them away. Well, you better fight to wean them away from their oh-so-polite incentives, too. Yes, REA is really a small part of your overall operation of your farm and ranch. It's an important part, but a small part. Our organizations and the people we work with, including municipal utilities and public power districts like Huron, Nebraska, know that. But we are willing, and we've got something to bring along. We've got to work together. And small towns, the REA co-ops, farmers and ranchers, everybody, to solve our total miseries, including the miseries of the poor people in rural America and in the congested citizens. I plead with the National Farmers Union tonight to help us. I want you to use, if you can, your good offices to bring about a leadership meeting, not of the professionals, but the people's elected or acting leaders, into an immediate meeting so that we can form an effective national coalition of some kind under one tent with a documented program we can all agree upon of action. Then we can act in concert in a common effort in the Congress. And our very survival at the moment is with the Congress. I don't want people to compromise and give away this program without a fight. We need some fingerprinting of congressmen. That's why I'm glad to see the Humphrey-Aiken bill get through the Senate in our case. And that's why I want fingerprinting in the House of Representatives. And let Mr. Nixon veto it. And then let's see who's going to stand up in the Congress on both sides of the aisle on what is supposed to be a non-political bipartisan issue, and see who's going to vote to override the veto or not. We've got to help make the congressmen men and tend to their jobs. I don't want to just supply them with oratorical material. Together, the liberal people and organizations have a tremendous responsibility to provide the leadership that can achieve our common aspirations and really attack our miseries. We need a new start to help reverse the dangerous trend of government by fiat, and we must organize against an administration that establishes its own priorities by the impoundment of funds or declaring null and void federal laws it does not wish to carry out. I know that an effective coalition cannot be created merely by invoking a leadership meeting, but we do have a coalition that desperately needs to get together. The coalition of organized labor, people from the large cities, Farmers Union, NFO, NRECA, Midwest Electric, church groups, rural housing organizations. This is such an urgent time, in my opinion, that we cannot talk in parochial terms about our own individual independent programs and not be concerned with the real problems of the entire country. Ben Franklin gave us some good advice at the founding of this nation. He said, if we don't hang together, we're going to hang separately. And don't you forget it, the process is already underway to hang us one at a time. Indeed, send not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. I congratulate the National Farmers Union for its many years of success in representing family farmers, family farming, small town living, as a leader in promoting it as a socially desirable goal for the people and for this nation. I say to you again that the need was never greater than it is today to become really involved in the democratic process while we still have it, in the effort to improve the opportunities for the people of America. Thank you very much.
Dwight, Are you all set for with escort? I mean, to a car? We got to get Fred to the airport in a hurry. Fred, thanks a million
I'm delighted to be here.
for a great fighting speech.